Count Lajos Batthyány de Németújvár was the first Prime Minister of Hungary. He was born in Pressburg, Pozsony on 10 February 1807, and was executed by firing squad in Pest on 6 October 1849, the same day as the 13 Martyrs of Arad. Career. His father was Count József Sándor Batthyány, his mother Borbálasz Kurlich. At an early age, he moved to Vienna with his mother and his brother after his parents' divorce. Batthyány had a private tutor, but his mother sent him to a boarding school and Batthyány rarely saw his mother again. Early years. At the age of 16, Batthyány finished his studies at boarding school and attended the academy in Zagreb. In 1826 he took a tour of duty in Italy for 4 years, where he was promoted to lieutenant and got his law degree. In 1830 he became a hereditary peer in the upper house in Hungary and took his seat in the parliament. But at this time Batthyány was not a politician by nature. In December 1834 he married Antonia Zichy. The children were Amalia Batthyány, Ilona Batthyány and Elena Batthyány. Batthyány's friend said that Antonia encouraged him to take on larger responsibilities in politics. Batthyány, the reform politician. Batthyány became more involved after the 1839–1840 Diet in Pozsony and was the leader of the opposition. He drew up a reform plan for them. Batthyány advised employing stenographers to record verbatim the proceedings of the upper house starting in 1840. Batthyány agreed with István Széchenyi's views on economics and politics. At the beginning of the 1830s, Batthyány was one of the people who promoted horse breeding in Hungary. Later they expanded into other animal breeding and established the Association of Hungarian Economy. Batthyány, following Széchenyi, supported breeding silkworms. He planted more than 50,000 mulberry trees on his farm to cultivate them. The Vashire County and the Economics Association of Szombathely were founded with Batthyány's help. At the start he agreed with Széchenyi that the new noblemen and aristocrats had to lead the new reform movement, but Batthyány's views were much closer to that of the nobility. Because of this, Batthyány tried to bite his tongue when dealing with Széchenyi and Lajos Kossuth. From 1843 onward he started to work with Kossuth. In the 1843–1844 parliament, Batthyány was the leader of the opposition for the entire parliament, and criticized the Habsburg Empire's internal affairs and foreign policy. After the dissolution of parliament, Batthyány moved to Pest, and in 1845 he was elected as the chairman of the Central Election Office. He had an important role in the other economic associations and set up the Vegyület. On 15 March 1847 an amalgamation of the Hungarian leftist movements was founded and Batthyány became its first president. Batthyány supported Kossuth both morally and financially. Kossuth became the representative for Pest County in the 1847 Diet. After this, Batthyány was the leader of the opposition in the upper house, while Kossuth had the same role in the lower house. The Batthyány government. Batthyány was part of the delegation to the Emperor Ferdinand I of Austria. They insisted Hungary's government be supreme in its territory. On 17 March 1848 the Emperor assented and Batthyány created the first Hungarian Diet. On 23 March 1848, as head of state, Batthyány commended his government to the Diet. The first task of the government was to work out the revolution's policies. After these were agreed, his government started to act on the 11th of April 1848. At the time, the internal affairs and foreign policy of Hungary were not stable, and Batthyány faced many problems. His first and most important act was to organize the armed forces and the local governments. He insisted that the Austrian army, when in Hungary, would come under Hungarian law, and this was conceded by the Austrian Empire. He tried to repatriate conscript soldiers from Hungary. He established the organization of militiamen, whose job was to ensure internal security. In the May he started to organize the independent Hungarian Revolutionary Army and recruited men into it. Batthyány took control of the organization of militiamen until Lajos Batthyány returned. At the same time he was Minister of War. Batthyány was a very capable leader, but he was stuck in the middle of a clash between the Austrian monarchy and the Hungarian separatists. He was devoted to the constitutional monarchy and aimed to keep the constitution, but the emperor was dissatisfied with his work. On the 29th of August, with the assent of Parliament, he went with Ferenc to the emperor to ask him to order the Serbs to capitulate and stop Ulačić, who was going to attack Hungary. At the same time, Batthyány offered Ulačić that Croatia could separate peacefully from Hungary. Batthyány's efforts were unsuccessful, even though the emperor formally relieved Ulačić of his duties. In practice, Ulačić and his army invaded Hungary on the 11th of September 1848. So Batthyány and his government resigned, except for Kossuth, Samir and Messeros. Later, on Palatine Stephen's request, Batthyány became Prime Minister again. On the 13th of September, Batthyány announced a rebellion and requested that the Palatine lead them. However, the Palatine, under the emperor's orders, resigned and left Hungary. The emperor didn't recognize the new government on the 25th of September. He also invalidated Batthyány's leadership and nominated Count Franz Philipp von Lamberg as the leader of the Hungarian army, but the rebels killed him on the 28th of September 1848 in Pest. Meanwhile, Batthyány traveled again to Vienna to seek a compromise with the emperor. Batthyány was successful in his hurried effort to arrange the Hungarian Revolutionary Army. The new army defeated the Croatians on the 29th of September at the Battle of Pest. Batthyány realized that he could not compromise with the emperor, so on the 2nd of October he resigned again and nominated Miklós Barabás as his successor. At the same time, Batthyány resigned his seat in parliament. Resignation. As an ordinary soldier, Batthyány joined Joseph Vida's army and fought against General Kuzman Todorović. But on the 11th of October 1848 he fell off his horse and broke his arm. After Batthyány recovered, he was again elected as a politician. Batthyány didn't want the parliament to move to Debrecen. Because of his proposal, the parliament sent a delegation to General Alfred I, Prince of Windisch-Gradz, to meet with him, as the parliament wanted to know Windisch-Gradz's purpose. But the general didn't want to meet with Batthyány, only with the other members of the delegation. On the 8th of January 1849, Batthyány went back to Pest, where he was captured at the Karolyi Palace and imprisoned in the Budai barracks. When the Hungarian army was nearer Pest, Batthyány was taken away to Pozsony, Ljubljana and Olmütz. The Hungarians tried to rescue him many times, but Batthyány asked them not to. Batthyány insisted that his actions were legitimate and that the court had no jurisdiction. Execution. On the 16th of August 1849 in Olmütz, the military court sent Batthyány to his fate. At first they wanted to confiscate his possessions and give him a prison sentence. But under pressure from Prince Felix of Schwarzenberg and the Austrian Empire, they instead sentenced Batthyány to death. The Hungarians carried Batthyány to Pest, because they hoped that Hainaut would give him mercy, but Hainaut sentenced him to hang. In her last visit, Batthyány's wife smuggled a small sword into the prison. Batthyány tried to commit suicide by cutting his jugular veins, but he failed in the attempt. Because of the scars on his neck, the court changed the sentence to execution by firing squad. On the evening of the 6th of October, Batthyány was drugged, and because of this he walked to the new building. He had lost much blood because of his suicide attempt, so that 2 people had to escort him. He was relieved to see that there were no gallows. Johann Kempen, the commander of the military district in Pest and Buda, knew that it was impossible to execute Batthyány by firing squad in his drugged state, but he sought no delay, so decided to shoot him in the head. Batthyány knelt in front of the firing squad and shouted, "El Jenahaza, Rajta, Vad Azok." Batthyány's funeral was in the city centre, in the vault of the Grey Friars Church. After the Austro-Hungarian Compromise of 1867, in 1870 his remains were moved to the newly built mausoleum in the Kerepesi Cemetery. Works. Batthyány's parliamentary speeches are preserved in contemporary diaries and political newspapers. His essay on cultivating sugar beet was printed in the periodical Magyar Gazda in 1842. Monuments. Batthyány's mausoleum in the Kerepesi Cemetery, built by Albert Shakadans at the request of the town of Székesfehérvár. Batthyány's portrait by Miklós Barabás. Batthyány Örökmegzés in Budapest. Batthyány Square and Batthyány Street in Budapest. In 2008, a statue of Batthyány was erected on Batthyány Square. The Batthyány Lajos Trust. The Batthyány Association's medallion issued in 1994, designed by Laszlo Slavics, Jr. Ancestors. Gallery.